more conniving to have the birthright actually passed along to my father. You see, my father was a mama's boy. And we understand that Rebecca and Isaac, Isaac's fooled and passes the birthright on to Jacob. I've got to tell you, a great rift came that day between my uncle and my father. In fact, the two of them parted ways. My father finds himself really out as a rancher, and he's working on this huge ranch. He's tending sheep, and he comes across a woman who becomes his heartthrob. He sees her and falls in love with her and decides he wants this woman as his wife. And so he goes to her father, and he actually makes barit with him. I will work 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage. Well, those years went by just like that, thinking about the time when he would be able to marry his beloved. Oh, it so happens on the night of the wedding with the veils and everything there that actually father-in-law does not provide Rachel. Actually, you know what's the result of those 7 years of hard work? Me. Actually, I'm the fourth born, but instead of Rachel, we get Leah, who's my mother. It's interesting that he actually promises Jacob to work another 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage, and that becomes the start, really, of a rather large family. In fact, I am one of 12 sons. 12 sons and one daughter, Dinah. Now, before you start thinking about this, 12 sons, one daughter, oh, poor Dinah. You need to understand that's about the right ratio. You understand if you've got a sister or a daughter, you understand the ratio is just about right. But 12 sons, a large family. Well, one day we heard about Uncle Esau, that he was coming to meet Jacob. I've got to tell you, my father was rather fearful of this. They've been estranged for a long time. In many ways, the birthright was stolen from him. And in fact, I've got to tell you that my father often said, now be careful, because the trickster often becomes the one tricked. But understand, Esau, they had been estranged because of this whole birthright thing, and Esau was coming. And so here's what my father did. He actually sent some servants out with some cattle and say, look, Esau, just a present for you. And then he sends all the young children out to meet him. Meanwhile, Jacob actually, he sneaks off. While father is out there by himself, he actually encounters an angel of the Lord. An angel of the Lord, maybe even more than that. And there's a great struggle that takes place. In fact, because of that, my father damaged his hip, never could walk the same way again. But he wrestled with an angel of God, and the angel changed his name, maybe more than an angel, because the new name of Jacob becomes Israel, which means he wrestled with God. My father's name changes from Jacob to Israel, and so, as I mentioned before, I am one of the 12 children of Israel, through whom God will show his chesed. Abram, I will bless you. I'll make your name great. Those who bless you, I will bless you. You will become a great nation. It comes in part through the children of Israel. But not yet. I'm getting ahead of my story. You see, I am one of 12, but I am not at all the favorite. Actually, that honor goes to one of the youngest, a true child of Rachel. His name, you've probably heard it, is Joseph. Now, while my father was a mama's boy, I've got to tell you that my father, his favorite was his son Joseph. In fact, Joseph didn't have to do a lot of the stuff that we had to do. All the rest of us, the 11 of us, we were out tending sheep and doing manual labor, but not so much Joseph. Actually, Joseph was given a fine coat of many colors, and he got off the hook when it came to the hard work. He had the responsibility, for example, of bringing the lunch out to us as we baked in the hot sun. I've got to tell you that while he was the favorite for Israel, he was not at all the favorite of his brothers. In fact, Joseph, you've got to understand, would come out, and he was a dreamer. Joseph would come out, and one day he came out and actually said, look, I've had a dream. And here's what my dream told me. One day, all of you will bow down before me. I will be in control of all of you, so you better shape up now. It didn't go well with the 11 of us. In fact, my brothers conspired, let's kill him. Now, you need to understand, they were serious. Kill him. Well, shamefully, I didn't stand up for Joseph in the way that I should have. But it was my idea to throw him in a cistern. And actually, it was my idea to sell him to a bunch of wandering nomads, and we sold him into slavery, taking his fancy robe dipped in blood back to our father and said, he's been killed. It about broke Israel's heart. But I've got to tell you, well, I was a scoundrel then and even later in life. Not Joseph. You see, Joseph had every reason really to curse God. God, what are you doing to me? Why am I being sold into slavery? But he didn't curse God. In fact, he was a man of Hesed. And it's interesting that very quickly he moved up through the ranks of slavery to where he became the second in charge really of a major household, Potiphar, until he was brought up on false accusations by Potiphar's wife and thrown once again into chains, this time in prison. Again, he had every reason to curse God, but still, even there, Joseph was a man of Hesed, covenant faithfulness. And once again, he got notoriety. Finally, he interprets a dream for Pharaoh, and he finds himself not second in command in Potiphar's house, but second in command over all of Egypt. And it's because of Joseph, a man of Chesed, God blesses the children of Israel. You see, there was a great famine. And it's because of Joseph that in Egypt they stockpiled all kinds of grain. And we literally went begging down to Egypt, trying to buy food for our family. And there we stood in front of the second of command of all of Egypt. We didn't recognize him. We thought Joseph was dead. And here we were begging and pleading. And Joseph, our brother, had every right to condemn us, to kill us. And yet even then, Joseph was a man of Chesed. He forgave us. Much like would be demonstrated when God himself forgave. See, it's through Joseph that the children of Israel moved to Egypt. And there in Egypt, of all places, they grow. They multiply. It's in Egypt where God's promise of you will have more descendants than sands of the seashore, that's where that took place. But you need to understand that Abraham never saw the result of God's Berit. That even Isaac and Jacob, they did not realize the full extent of God's faithfulness as through it all, even when they wandered, even when they abandoned covenant, even when they were not practicing Hesed, God still remained faithful. And it's amazing that God would take unfaithful people and still God would remain faithful. And even though people wandered, even though people made serious mistakes, God himself was faithful and he could bring bad things and make from that good. See, it's interesting that often we're unable to see God's full picture, his plan as it's being worked out. And sometimes we even think our story is unresolved. And yet, friend, I need to tell you, God is a God, He's a God of berit, and he's a God who practices chesed, covenant faithfulness, even though from our vantage point, it doesn't make sense. You know, we all thought Joseph must be the son of promise. I mean, look what he did for the children of Israel. The child of promise. And yet I've got to tell you, Joseph was not the child of promise. In fact, Joseph, it's not even the lineage of him that comes, the child of promise comes from. In fact, I want to tell you just briefly about the true child of promise. We'd call him the Messiah, the hope of Israel. You see, he was promised to be a child of David from the branch of Jesse, called the Lion of Judah. And even though I was a scoundrel, I wish I would have learned at an early age what Joseph knew, that God honors those people who practice covenant faithfulness. But even my own story, God can take a scoundrel and bring forth from him the promised Messiah. See, my name is Judah, son of Jacob.